live, just so you know. Yeah. You're welcome.
I mean, we're live.
Cool.
We're going to go ahead and get started here in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Hello. Para los que vienen llegando ahorita, si se pueden acomodar acá enfrente, por favor, para llenar todas las mesas. Gracias.
Kevin, send it to the link. I can't go on and off on the so give me I quit like 3 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago. I have a link. I'll link to the Instagram, Facebook, and then we'll keep sharing it. We need to draw more attention to YouTube videos. We need for our longer form videos.
That'll get your life.
And then I can send it to you, or you can just go to the YouTube channel. Yeah, there'll be a small delay.
What's that?
So there'll be a small delay, but
That's why. Let you stand in front of it. Look at this.
and I'll be able to control the camera from here too. So.
9 feet for that slight extension.
That thing will be saved on there for later. Right?
Yeah, that's what's cool about it. The long form lives better on YouTube anyways. Yeah.
Oh, it's 2 minutes.
We will be able to, yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think we have a few people coming in from the parking lot, but we'll get started with just a couple introduction remarks. I am Toby Wells. I am the owner and CEO of Orchard Machinery Corporation. I want to thank all of you for coming today. We greatly appreciate your time. Your time is very valuable to us, and we will make this worth your while today. We manufacture expensive machines. Where's Jackson? Is he here? No, Jackson is here. We manufacture expensive machines, huh, Jackson? And I'm only saying that because he's heard me say this now 5 times, and he was mocking me earlier this morning, so I just had to point that out. Our machines are expensive, and they need to run well. And that's what we're going to work with you today and teach you some tools on how to keep these machines up and running. We pride ourselves on strong service and parts. It's part of our logo. If you need us, we will be there. We have service centers up and down the valley. We just opened a new on. It takes a lot of work to put on these service schools. We've put on now, I think this is our 4th one. So I really appreciate all the work that goes into putting on the service schools. We're going to do some introductions. Michael will introduce his crew that he has here. Jay can introduce his crew. And then we have Jose up here. Thank you so much. He's going to interpret for us today.
Buenos días todos y bienvenidos a la Escuela de Servicio 2025. Este es Toby Wells, la dueña y CEO de la compañía. Quiere agradecer a todos por venir, por su tiempo. Dice que nosotros hacemos unas máquinas muy caras, lo que queremos hacer es enseñarle algo para qué estamos haciendo estas escuelas, para que podamos todos trabajar bien en las máquinas y que trabajen a como lo que cuesten. Va a ser un poquito de introducciones. Michael acá está, va a hacer introducciones del equipo de él aquí de Shafter, y también está Jay. Muchas gracias por venir y vamos a comenzar ahorita unos 5 minutos.
I'd also like to do an introduction to our president right over here, Brian Anderson. He's going to take the mic after me and do an introduction to the team.
What desk? Oh, man. I got it.
This is Brian Anderson, president of OMC. So we couldn't do without you, and he does a lot of good stuff for us. I don't know. Here, I take both of them. Okay. What we're going to go over today with you are just quick fixes that you can do in the field, in the orchard, to get the machine up running quicker than if you had to wait for us to perform the service. We're always more than happy to come out to you, but sometimes there's things that you can do in the orchard, get those machines up running quicker, and that's the name of the game. Our machines run well, however, they need to be properly maintained. There's proper winter service that needs to be, I think I'm hitting this with my finger. There's winter service that needs to be performed, and then service right before you get those machines at the beginning of harvest and get them in the orchard. So those are the two things that we're going to focus in on today, just those key things that you need to do to the machines to keep them running well for an extended period of time.
So, lo que dice es, vamos a repasar las máquinas. Hay algunas cosas que podemos hacer en el field para que sigan trabajando las máquinas. Hay veces que nosotros estamos muy ocupados, pero siempre tratamos de llegar con suficiente tiempo para poder echarlos a andar. Lo que vamos a repasar son las cosas que cada quien puede hacer en lo que llegamos nosotros para ver si sigue trabajando la máquina.
Just to quickly touch on some of the highlights of what we've been doing this year up at OMC and our service centers. I will say we've had a busy year, but I'll say that we've had a few busy years. For those of you who knew, my father was Don Mayo, and he will have been passed away now 3 years in August. And since his passing, I think he would be very proud of the team. We've been quite busy. Just to highlight a few things from this year, we are currently manufacturing over 40 different pieces of equipment. And how we jumped up to, it's actually more than that, I forget what it is exactly, 43 pieces of equipment. We acquired Weiss McNair this year, and that was a huge acquisition for us. We feel honored to have had the opportunity to acquire Weiss, and along with Weiss, we got their key employees are now part of our OMC team. So that has just been a wonderful acquisition for us. And with that acquisition, we now have a full harvest line, one-stop shopping here at OMC for all your harvest equipment needs.
So, un poco de lo que he estado trabajando OMC, una de las mayorías cosas ha sido la compra que se juntó Weiss McNair. So ahora se hacen las máquinas OMC por Weiss McNair. Esa es una de las metas que se cumplió, que el papá Don Mayo hubiera estado muy orgulloso de eso. Es una de las cosas que él estaba trabajando a hacer. La compañía de Weiss McNair se trajo muchos de los ingenieros y los vendedores de ellos, so ellos ahora son parte del equipo del OMC.
Thanks, Jose. Just a few other items. Another project that's an ongoing project for us at the plant, and every year this is a focus of ours, is just to constantly improve our machines. And we look to our customers to give us feedback. You're running these machines in the orchard space and putting hours on them. You know these machines well, and we value your input. So we take everyone's input through the year, and annually we sit down and assess all of the great suggestions we get from our customers on how to improve our machines, and we take that very seriously. So we thank all of you for that input. It's crucial for our success and to keep pushing the industry forward and making improvements to our machines. We're also currently just the forefront in automated machines. We're running automation on several of our machines, and that's been an exciting endeavor for us. And I don't know if any of you have seen this, hopefully on some of our social media platforms, but we came up with a blower this year. We named it the California Tornado. You can attach that blower to the back of any machine that's 17 or newer, but I think Alan has come come up with a quick solution, right, Alan, on how to get that blower even on an older machine. So that's just to really reduce the passes through the orchard space. And I don't know, Michael, you don't have a blower here, do you? No. Let us know if you'd like to see one of those blowers. We're excited about it, and we think it's going to make a huge improvement to the harvest.
So, una de las razones de por qué hacemos esto es que nos gusta recibir el impuesto de ustedes, o sea, cuando digan ustedes, ¿sabes qué? Esto puede ser diferente a la máquina para que nosotros lo arreglemos en el lado de nosotros. Otra cosa que quiere decir es uno de los abanicos que se inventó este año o el año pasado ha sido uno de los abanicos que se le puede poner atrás de los springs para poder sopletear en lo que va chequeando la máquina también.
With that being said, I will call Brian up here and give him the mic. So thanks, guys, and I appreciate your attendance today.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with some introductions real quick, and we're going to go around here, and then we'll hand it off to Mike and Jake. So, starting here on the right of me here, we have Jose. Jose's out of Shafter. You probably all know him already. And then next to him, we have John Crum. John Crum is sales out of Fireball, and he also does all of our social media as well. So he's actually, I think we're live today on YouTube. So anyway, he'll pan around so you guys can get caught on that as well. Next to him, we have Kevin Struxma. Kevin is out of all, I guess he's covering all the service centers now. So he'll be looking out after this shop and all the others, overseeing those as a global service manager. Next to him, he'll be presenting today as well. So he has some good stuff, I think. Next to him, we have Alan Isaacson. Alan Isaacson is our head of engineering, and he'll be talking about hydraulics, electronics, and engines. Oh, it's engines and electronics today. We mixed it up a little bit. All right, anyways, we go around the room. We have Emin. Emin comes to us, has been with us for a couple months now. Emin is very familiar with this area. He was with some other brand for a while, probably too long. But anyway, so we're glad to have him on the team. Next to Emin, we have Taryn Whitmore. Taryn comes to us he's one of the Weiss McNair customer service technicians. So he's kind of one of the hands-on field guys, does field testing, R&D, prototyping, that kind of stuff. And so he comes to us from the Weiss McNair team, so he'll be all around the valley as well. Next to him, we have Kevin Clausen. Kevin Clausen also comes from the Weiss team. Had a bad spell for a few months there, but he's over it now. But anyway, he comes to us. He's in charge of product support, so he's covering the whole south part of the valley. Sweepers and harvesters, their expertise. Also has a heavy hand in the prototyping and R&D. Next to him, we have Mario. Mario comes to us from Weiss McNair as well. Mario and Taryn have basically the same position, and so they're kind of experts in the realm of sweepers and harvesters. So if you have questions related to that, those two guys are the ticket right there. Mario will actually be translating today for Jack when Jack does the sweeper and harvester preventative maintenance and stuff. So I'm next to him we have Martin. Martin is in charge, I think we call him the Director of Product Support and Development or something like that. Anyway, Martin been in the business for about 25 years, if I remember correctly. And so he's kind of our catching frame expert and has a good head on his shoulders for about everything. All right, next to him, needs no introduction, is Ryan Johnson from Berenson. Please hold your applause until we're done. Next to Ryan, we have Fitz. Fitz is on his summer break. He's going to work at the plant again, I think, this summer. We're doing some service work. Fitz is Toby's son, and he's joining the company. So I've been working how many summers, Fitz? 4 summers. Spent a little bit of time welding, a little bit of time assembling, so he's kind of getting his feet wet and learning a little bit about everything. Next to him, we have Jackson Becker. Jackson's going to talk to us today about sweepers, harvesters, maintenance. He comes to us from Weiss McNair. He's based in the North State, does sales in the North State and several other places, Oregon, New Mexico, take care of pecans. Oh, I forgot that part about Kevin. Kevin also does the pecan area as well. All right, next to him, we already talked, Toby already introduced. Next to them, Larry Smith is helping cook today. Larry Smith's out of Northern California, does sales, and probably the greatest team player of all time. Next up, we're going to skip because Michael's going to do the intros. Then we have Abe. Abe comes out of Modesto, service manager and the barbecue master today, making sure all your food tastes great. And if the food tastes terrible, don't blame Abe, blame Larry. And then next to Abe, we have David Leinfelder from Holta, California. He's our cat rep. And then also today from Quinn Cat, we have Corey Freeman, Craig Richards, and Holly Curley in the back. So if you have cat questions later, they're here for you. All right? And then next up, I guess, Michael.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Poncetta. I am the service manager here at this location. We run OMC techs. Now we know Weiss McNair equipment also. But we also have orchard harvesting. So you see a lot of the equipment out here. It's pistachio equipment that we go out and harvest for customers. We run 4 techs out of this location. We got Jose Barraza right here. If you need anything welded, he can do it. He can weld cardboard together. But in the back, we got, so for OHC, we have Luis Garcia. Then we have Caleb Vasquez. And then we got Primo Jorge Garcia right there. And then our other techs, other than Jose, we have, well, James Funk, a large white angry guy. He's not here right now. Isaac Franco, he's got ice in his ears sometimes. He's on a service call right now. We have Alfredo Sanchez here. He's new to the team too. He also is a very great welder. And then we have our most important people. We have Muscles Eddie Santiago. He's our parts guy on our counter. If you guys need anything today, make sure you stop at the counter in front and meet Eddie. And then the boss of this location is Amanda Brown, our admin. Can we give Amanda a round of applause? It's Amanda. She's very, she's great. So if you guys need anything or have any questions, don't hesitate to talk to Jose or Alfredo. You can quiz him, see what he knows so far. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And don't ever hesitate to call or ask us questions. All right. And then, so the service manager for Tulare is Jake here. Jake, I will come over here and stand in the middle. Let everybody see Jake here. Yeah. Go smile for the camera. All right, Jake over there. There he tries. He doesn't turn the other way.
Hi guys, my name is Jake. I'm the service manager from Tulare. We run 5 techs out of Tulare, as well as parts counter and our admin. We have, where are they at? We have Steve Herrera over here. He's a service tech. Ramon Alvarado, he's one of our newer techs. Santiago Compa, he's also a service tech, and then Jesus Sanchez. You raise your hand, Jesus. And then Ricky Sosa, he is not here today. And then at our shop, our parts counter, we have Tyler Rodriguez as well as Adriana Munoz as our admin.
Bienvenidos todos. Esto es todo el equipo de OMC. Gracias.
We got the cat people.
Oh, y los de Caterpillar también. Si tienen algunas preguntas, hay gente de Caterpillar también. Están acá atrás. Y Ryan Johnson es de Dan Frost Prenderson. Cualquier pregunta de hidráulicos, allá están también.
All right, we'll get started. Not that it has a lot of effect on anybody down here, but we did open a new service center. We're in the process of opening a new service center up north in the area where Weiss McNair was based. And so that service center is in Durham. And in the process of acquiring Weiss McNair, we also ended up expanding our Orland shop. So it's twice the size because they're both based in that same area where Weiss was. And then we also are carrying a full line of Weiss parts here as well, and then training technicians in the process too, so they're all prepared. Anyway, these are the 6 service parts and service locations that are owned by Orchard Machinery throughout the state. So we have Orland, Durham, Tulare, Modesto, Shafter, and Fireball. So obviously we're in Shafter, and the next closest one would be Tulare. Really important to notice the 2 phone numbers down at the bottom. You'll see Kevin's phone number and then Sal Luna. Sal Luna is the parts manager out of Yuba City, and he's responsible for getting parts to all the outside service centers.
So, estos son los centros de servicio de OMC. El nuevo que se acaba de hacer es en Durham. Esos van a tener partes de OMC igual que las de Weiss McNair. Aquí están toda la información de los 6 centros de servicio que tenemos, y los números de abajo viene siendo el Kevin Struchman, que él se encarga de todos los centros de servicios, o si tienen alguna pregunta de máquinas o lo que sea, pueden llamarle a él. Y Saul Luna es el manejador de los partes en el centro de Lima.
All right, next slide up is the authorized parts locations. So there's 4 of those throughout the state that sell Fortune Machinery parts as well. None really down in this area because we cover it very, very well with the service centers, but Arbuckle, Madera, Linden, and Woodland.
So, otros de las locaciones que están autorizados para vender partes de OMC y de Weiss McNair son estas 4 locaciones. La mayoría están más al norte porque acá tenemos todos estos otros servicios.
All right, we'll get started. Any questions so far? All right, so I tend to speak very quickly, and we're going to try to get through this rapidly. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll get to the questions as we can. But just make sure you stop us on our tracks. You don't have to wait till the end. If you have a question, make sure you stop. The more questions, the better, and more interactive in this speak. Yes.
So, vamos a empezar a repasar algunas cosas que quieren enseñarles. Si alguno tiene alguna pregunta, párenos, levanten la mano, hagan la pregunta, así para que se pueda comunicar todo lo que y contestar todas las preguntas que tengan.
All right, we're going to talk about pillow pads to start. So, our mainstay is manufacturing tree shakers, right? So, in the process, we sell them 2 different ways. We sell them with air pads, and we sell them with hollow pads, right? There's pros and cons to both of them, and we'll go through those over the next few slides. This is a cutaway of an air pad, and this is the air pad hole, and this is the hollow pad.
So, vamos a repasar las almohadillas. Tenemos 2 diferentes estilos. Tenemos uno sólida o ovalada, y tenemos otra que es aire que tiene balines adentro. Y este es una aire completo con los balines adentro.
All right, so we're going to talk about the air pads first, and the major differences between these 2 pads, right? So we go through a lot of trouble to use this horsepower, 174 horsepower in a shaker. We want to take all that horsepower and create a shake so we can shake the tree to whatever varying degree we need to. In that process, we want to make sure we clamp tightly to the tree, and we also are safe on the tree, right? So the air pad allows us to clamp to the tree tightly and evenly, but it requires a lot of maintenance. This is the downside of the air pad. Safer on trees, transmits more shake, but requires more maintenance that we'll go over in the next few slides. Next up is the hollow pad. If you can imagine, we just talked about 174 horsepower trying to create all this shake and transfer it into a tree, right? And if you look at that, that's about 4 inches of rubber, right? So we're going through all the trouble of creating this vibration, and then we're putting it through a shock absorber, right? So that doesn't transmit the shake as well as the fill pads, because these will take the shape of the tree. We'll go over that in the next couple slides. So easier on the small trees, more shake to the large trees, and then transmitting through this.
So, las 2 cosas diferentes de estas almohadas es que este otro de aire lleva un poco más de mantenimiento, y este otro de hule tiene 4 pulgadas de hule. Es un poquito más duro en la máquina, son 174 caballos de fuerza, y esto es lo único que está protegiendo la chequeada, entre medio de la chequeada y la almohada. So, la cosa de esto es para reducir toda la fuerza en el árbol.
All right, so if you see in the slide, kind of depicts the amount of rubber that you have to transfer through. So, and through this, you can see the difference here. So this is actually what it looks like, the contact pressure up from the pads to the tree. The air pads, having the thinner wall, makes it so it's more pliable, and we can actually conform to the tree. Depending on how much fill we put in the pad will determine how much the pad deflects. So the fuller it is, the less it will deflect. So the emptier it is, the more it'll take the shape of the tree. So in this example we see on the screen, this is a fairly large tree and we want good wrap, we have to have less fill in it, right? So less fill means more wrap on large trees. It is a maintenance factor, so you need to know that, like, hey, I have a diet of large trees, I need to change my pad fill level. But what it allows us to do is clamp evenly. We have a more even clamp surface around the tree, and it allows us to transfer more shape to the tree, especially in large trees. And when it comes to small trees, we can localize that, right? On the hollow pads, you can see here, we have a higher pressure point in the center where the rubber contacts, and then it distributes out less as you go. So less contact and more pressure located in one spot.
So, estas imágenes les enseña los puntos de contacto de las almohadas al árbol. Si tienen esta almohada que lleva los balines adentro, tiene más puntos de contacto de alrededor del árbol. So, se puede hacer más chequeo con estos de aire. Y estos otros de hule tienen un punto de contacto menos, so se va a hacer más fuerza en el tronco del árbol con los de hule, las sólidas. So, en un árbol chico, esta casi las puede abrazar todas, que de eso sale un mejor chequeo para los árboles con las de aire.
All right, any questions?
¿Preguntas?
All right, next slide. Next slide we're going to talk about, we just talked about the pad fill and the amount of fill in here, right? So, by determining, if you look at the pad stand on end, this is kind of what we're looking at here on the screen, but cut away. All right, so we can determine how much the pad deflects by the amount of fill we put in it, right? So this is kind of the rule of thumb for when you're filling the pad. So we wanted to leave it down a little bit when we're doing small trees, so it has less to deflect. This can also be a problem too if you have a very full pad on large trees, and it can be the inverse too. It's like you want to make sure we're adjusting it appropriately. Once again, there's a little bit of maintenance involved, but we're going to get a better shape and safer on trees. All right, 1 inch down for 3 to 4 inch trees, 2 inches down for 4 to 8, and then 3 inches down for the larger trees.
Una de las cosas que usamos para referente para cuántos balines echarle a cada almohada, si son los troncos de 3 a 4 pulgadas, se le va a dejar nomás hasta 1 pulgada de llena. Ya si son de 4 o 8 pulgadas el tronco, hay que dejarle 2, y si son de 8 a 12, hay que dejarle 3 pulgadas hasta que se llene. Eso es para que abrace mejor al árbol, y igual si la tienen llena, puede empezar a tronar los diffusers o los quiebras, o empiezan a salir más problemas.
All right. So, next slide. So the key to one of the keys to making this work is to make sure that these beads continue to stay beads, right? So their original purpose in life is they're a nylon injection molding resin, right? So what that means is they were originally purposed for putting into an injection mold and then heating them up and then molding them into a solid object. So at about 450 degrees Fahrenheit, they start to melt, and they will melt into large clumps inside the pad. So if we don't keep them cool, we start to make large clumps, and then these large clumps have sharp edges, and then the sharp edges start to eat into the pad. So we need to make sure that we're keeping the beads cool, and part of that process is the air pad, is the air, right? So air goes through the pad via this hose, right? The hose goes in the end here, and then the air is diffused through the diffuser, one on each end, right? One lets the air in, the one on the other end lets the air out. What can happen over time is the diffuser starts to get plugged, right? And as this diffuser gets plugged, we don't have airflow through. We don't have airflow, the pads don't stay cool, and then we start to have problems. It doesn't take long on a hot day, especially if you're shaking, quite a few trees, but also your shake duration. If you're shaking for longer durations, say, 5 seconds or something like that, which is usually way too long, by the way. But if you're shaking for long durations, it doesn't take long to heat these beads up. We can heat these beads up on a hot day in less than an hour if we don't have air running through there and keeping them cool. So we need to make sure air is going through it all the time. goes through into the diffuser and out the other end. If it starts to get plugged, what happens is we build pressure, and if you see the air gauge in the cab, you need to be watching that, because what happens, we start blocking the diffusers, we don't have good airflow, the air pressure rises, right? If the air pressure gets too high and stays high, one, the pad's not going to get cool because it's not letting the air out, but we also build heat in the air compressor, right? And when the air compressor builds heat, it expands and it will lock up. So there's a couple things that go wrong. So we need to make sure we're watching the air gauge and that the air pressure doesn't stay high. So if you're up there 13 to 15 psi all day long, you're going to have a lot of pressure. It's going to build up heat in the pump, and then we're going to have problems. So we need to make sure you see the pressure high. We either want to change these out and then clean them, or just clean them and then put them back in to make sure we have that airflow. The inverse of that is we don't have enough airflow because the air hose has come off, or some open to atmosphere, right? So if the air hose comes off, more times than not, this is our problem, right? Air hose comes off, so we're obviously not blowing air through there. But what will happen is the air gauge will go down to zero. Zero usually tells you something's open to atmosphere. We're just blowing that air out, path of least resistance, and not going through the pad. It's super important that we keep the pads cool and the air flowing.
So, estas almohadas adentro llevan como un tipo balín. Esos balines hay que mantenerlos frías o frescas para que no se derriten a 450 grados, y en un día caliente se pueden derretir muy rápido. ¿Cómo se mantiene frescas? Es con esta manguera sale el aire de la bomba a la manguera y entra adentro y pasa por la almohada. Muchas veces lo que pasa, si se empiezan a calentar, esto se hace en bolas grandes y empieza a tapar los diffusers. Si uno de los diffusers está tapada, va a calentar de más los balines y va a empezar a derretirlos. Y para que no pase eso, si pueden mirar en el manómetro, el manómetro debe trabajar entre 0 y 5 libras de aire. Cuando llega a 15 es que alguno de estos se tapó y hay que quitarlas, limpiarlos o cambiarlos, ponerle nuevos. Siempre hay que mantenerlas frescas y que esté corriendo el aire. Otra cosa que puede pasar es que si empieza a marcar 0 o 2, que esté muy bajito, lo que pasa muchas veces es que se troza la manguera y quiere decir que está escapando el aire por otro lado y no le está entrando a las almohadas. Entonces, si eso llega a estar muy bajo o en 0, hay que buscarle a ver si la manguera está trozada o si tal vez no esté trabajando la bomba. Otra cosa que también es donde llega hasta la almohada, en cada máquina, si tiene almohadas de aire, también va a llevar 2 tanques. Se mezcla también el tanque de enfrente, el agua se mezcla con el aire para mantenerlos fríos. Solamente el tanque de enfrente es la que llevan por dentro de las almohadas, y la de atrás es para los hules.
All right. This is where I'm going to tell you, anybody who has air pads or machine and they currently have a system they're using for rotation, changing film, any of that, continue to do what you're doing if you've had a successful run. If not, this is what we're recommending currently today, and this one's kind of in flux, so it can change a little bit. But the bottom line is we just need to be rotating the pad. And when you say rotating the pad, we need turn. Just turning it about a quarter of a turn. So what that does is just makes it so we're not just wearing on one side of it when we're clamping and shaking. We're using the whole surface, like rotating your tires. You want to make sure you use the whole pad up and getting a longer life. And the pad should be changed out on a regular basis. Those intervals really vary with the severity of the conditions. Once you have hot days, you're going to need to do it more often, but we need to make sure we're rotating it and then keeping an eye on it. And if they start to get hot, do change them out.
So, una de las cosas de mantenimiento para las almohadas de aire es que siempre hay que darle vuelta. Aquí sugerimos un cuarto de vuelta cada día. Muchos ya tienen años trabajando en estas máquinas, ya tienen una forma de que ustedes usan, ya sea dándole vuelta a cada surco o cada bloque, como le quieran hacer. Si eso trabaja para ustedes, está bien, síganlo haciendo, pero si no, sugerimos que un cuarto de vuelta cada día. Y también va a depender de cómo esté el tronco. Muchas veces los árboles más grandes los dañan más antes que los otros chicos. So, es nomás uno de los sugerimientos que hacemos para el mantenimiento de las armadas de aire.
All right, so we just talked about air pads. I think that was 4, maybe 5 slides on air pads. This is the 1 slide on hollow pads, right? So a lot less maintenance involved, but there's obviously some drawbacks to it. But really, all we're asking you to do on the hollow pads is make sure that what happens dry opportunity to use the other side, so you want to make sure you do flip them so you're getting the maximum life out of them. But that's the 1 slide on maintenance here, but you got to remember, if you choose to go the hollow pad route, they don't transfer as much energy and they're not as safe on the trees.
So, el mantenimiento de estas almohadas ovaladas es un poquito menos que las de aire, nomás que sí dañan un poquito más el árbol. Lo que se sugiere para estas es que les den una media vuelta cada semana. La razón es porque si nomás está trabajando en un lado de la almohada, se empieza a debilitar y se empieza a esquillar. So, hay que darle vuelta a estas una vez por semana.
All right, next we're going to talk about slings. Kevin is our sling model today. He's going to hold the slings for us. All right. You can hold them up, or we got to come.
Hold them up.
All right.
Oh, I bring them to you with the camera.
All right. All right, so it's important on the slings that we install them the right way. There is a thick side and a thin side of rubber, right? Bring the long one over to you, Kevin. So there's a thin side and a thick side of rubber. So we always want the thick side out to the tree. That's going to give us the most life out of it. And then the inside, want that, right? So slings have a ton of different names. There's inner slings, outer slings, long sling, short sling. There's just a ton of different ways we call them. But either way, the longer one is the one that suspends the pad, and the other one's the cover sling on the outside. What makes the slings work, so what we're trying to accomplish here is the one on the outside that has contact with the tree, doesn't rub on the tree, right? So we're not creating friction, and the other ones hold the pad. So when we do this and we install new slings, I told you which side, the rubber side goes out, so actually top one will be backward, it should be. They should be mounted like that, right? You go to put these two together, you'll see they do not slide, right? So it's important to know that if we put new slings on, we want to pre-lubricate the slings. And the next slide, we'll kind of give you an example of what that looks like. What we want to hear is these two, the thick side out. The thick side always faces the tree. That gets us maximum life, right? Right.
Una de las cosas muy importantes es cómo instalar los hules. Los hules tienen dos lados, tiene un lado más delgadito y un lado más grueso de hule. El lado más grueso es la que siempre está para el lado del árbol. Eso es lo que les da más vida a los hules. Lo que tratamos de hacer siempre es mantenerlos lubricados para que no dañe los árboles. Una de las cosas también, cuando cambian y pongan hules nuevos, siempre hay que lubricarlos antes de empezar a trabajar con la máquina. Levanten los hules y lubríquelos por el medio cuando estén nuevos todo el tiempo.
That page right there is right out of the owner's manual too. So one of the things we talk about briefly too is like we have a ton of resources. Probably part of what we want to express today though is like Orchard Machinery has a ton of resources for you. Whether it's Jose, it's Kevin, we have a huge team available, and just not with one person. Your sales people, the service people, the customer service techs, the manual, they're all resources. And then we also, as we do this, click next slide. We're also creating, more online content, right? So this is a good example of what some good online content looks like. This is actually John working, which is caught on film, right? So, and he's shown an example of how we pre-treat slings. So it's a good lead into this. Pre-treating slings is basically applying silicone to the face of the sling in between so that you make sure when it does clamp to the tree, it's allowed to slide so we're not barking trees. This is really good, cheap insurance in the beginning to make sure we lather them up well with silicone and to make sure that they're able to slide back and forth.
So, una de las cosas de aquí de OMC es que tienen ayuda para cualquier pregunta que tengan ustedes, ya si sea de partes de los managers o uno de los mecánicos, nos pueden hablar, cualquier cosa, estamos ahí disponibles. Este slide les está enseñando cómo hacer el pretratamiento cuando ponen hules nuevos. So, para cualquier preguntas que tengan, siempre nos pueden hablar y nosotros le podemos ayudar por teléfono o ya si vamos a donde están ustedes para echarles la mano, para echarlos bien a andar.
All right, so that's pre-treating the slings, right? So it makes sure they're lubricated when we get started. The next thing we're going to talk about is how that happens automatically when you have the auto loop system on. It needs to be turned on. So what we do is this bladder, this even flow bladder, distributes a water and silicone emulsion in between the slings, right? So every time you hit clamp open, or if clamp open happens even automatically in the auto mode, it will disperse some fluid out there and do the silicone, right? A couple things to remember. If you put a new even flow on, they'll get ratty, and then you have to replace it. There's 4 holes in this. We need to make sure that after you put one on, that you're actually getting that fluid out of all 4 holes. Another thing to remember when we're putting them onto, or we replace the slings, these 2 bolts in the center, if you over tighten the 2 in the center, we can actually cut off the water flow to the pad, right? So if you're looking over here on the Sprint, the outer ones get tight and the inner ones need to be slightly looser than that so that we make sure the water flow goes out. And after we put the new ones on, we need to make sure we cycle the clamp open a couple times with the water auto loop on, and then make sure that the water is being dispersed evenly. Make sure it's on both sides.
So, la manera que trabaja el aire junto con el silicón para lubricarlos es mete el aire cada que presiona el botón para abrir, no es para cerrar. So, cada que presiona el botón para abrir la tijera, va a echar aire por estos hules. Una cosa que hay que tener en mente también, si llegan a apretar estos demás, los 2 tornillos del medio, puede cortar el agua de los hules. So, cuando pongan uno nuevo, hay que apretarlos nomás suficientemente para que pueda salir agua de los 4 hoyos que tiene abajo. Por eso se tienen las 3 placas de arriba. Tiene 3 puercas en un lado y 3 en el otro lado, y los únicos 2 del medio son por donde corre el agua. So, si alguna vez pongan esto y miran que no está saliendo el agua, hay que aflojarle poquito a la placa del medio para que corra bien el agua.
All right, next screen shows how we adjust the water setting. So on the machines, there's 2 water settings. It says water pads. So the water is the one we're currently talking about for the auto loop, and that is set in seconds. So that's basically, so every time clamp open happens, that pump runs for whatever amount you put in there. From the factory, it set it like a quarter of a second, so it doesn't take a lot of water. You can put more water out if you want. Just keep in mind that if you're applying more water and more silicone every time you do clamp open, you have the potential to run out of water over the course of the day. You can actually use up that whole 25 gallons in a hurry if you're putting too much water out. The other thing is you can get things pretty wet out there, and then it just gets to be a mess. If you're, don't see it a lot anymore, but if you're scaffold shaking, anybody's doing walnuts, we're up here like this, we generally want to put a little bit more water in there because it tends to drain off a little quicker. And then you got to just watch that water level. The other one you see on there is the water pads, and that's for when we're injecting the water through the pads to keep them cool.
So, aquí en esta imagen les enseña en la pantalla los ajustes para lo del agua, la que lleva en las almohadas y la que lleva en los hules. Eso se ajustan y va por segundo. Si están poniendo el agua, si lo ponen muchos segundos, puede correr el riesgo de que se les acaba el agua en el tanque antes de acabar el día. So, aquí es donde se les puede ajustar poquito. Otra cosa que sugirió, si están usando un monoboom o estén chequeando muy arriba, se puede ajustar aquí y echarle un poquito más agua, porque lo que pasa es que en lugar de tirar todo el agua parejo cuando uno está abajo, empieza a tirar para abajo, o se le puede ajustar y echarle más agua.
All right, next up, this is kind of last slide on what we're talking about, slings and clamping, pads, and all that. So really this last slide, what we're going to talk about is adjusting clamp pressure. I think the important thing to realize here is it doesn't require a lot of adjustment. It's just depending on the size of the trees. But 1500 PSI is our max. So we never want our clamp pressure to go above that. So you'll see we're on the gauge that's marked 1500. So what happens is, one, you can over clamp the tree. Small trees, you want less clamping force. Larger trees, more clamping force, right? So our minimum should be about 800 PSI, because you don't want to go lower than that, because really you can't effectively close the clamp arm with less pressure. But you want light pressure, you can go as low as 800, assuming that the arm will still close, right, without prematurely shaking. And then 1500 on the top side, right? So we do that for a couple reasons, and one of them is that the sequence pressure is at 2000 PSI. And what the sequence pressure is as we hit clamp close, we're clamping slowly, right? But we're also holding pressure back from going to the shake motor. So as we're clamping, and we don't want the oil to go there until we make sure we have a full clamp. So the clamp pressure is set to 1500, and the sequence pressure is at 2000. If we don't have enough pressure differential in there, we can get premature shake. So as we're clamping and we're too close to our sequence pressure, it starts shaking, and we can have problems as well. So you don't want premature shake, so we have to have a pressure differential. You might notice, like in the wintertime when you're going to shake sometimes too, you might get a little bit of premature shake, and that's generally because the oil is cold and it's taking more force to close the clamp arm than the clamp pressure is at. So it's already starting to build that up.
So en esta imagen les enseña cómo regular la presión de la tijera. Lo menos que quieren que lo usen, ya si son árboles chicos, son 800 libras de presión. Lo máximo son 1500, aquí marca en el manómetro 1500 libras, eso es lo máximo. La razón de que no queremos que lo suban más de 1500 es que tiene otro cartucho de la secuencia. Ese le manda la presión a la bomba, a la clampa, para poder agarrar bien el árbol. Si sube más de 1500 y no tiene 500 de diferencia de la secuencia al pressure reducer, no va a chequear muy antes de cerrar la tijera, y nunca hay que ponerle más de 1500.
All right, all the text you see on the screen is in the owner's manual on how to adjust that. All right, that's pads, air pads, maintenance of pads, slings, water system, air system. Any questions?
Preguntas.
¿Cuál es la habilidad de cada cosa? O sea, ¿cuál es la diferencia que dura más tiempo trabajando?
He wants to know what's the durability or what's the time frame between the oval pads and the air pads.
That's a doggone good question. It really does vary depending on how well you take care of the air pads, right? So these have a very limited life. They're going to get hot, they're going to crack, they're going to split, right? The air pads, depending on how well they're taken care of, I had customers run them for years. You know what I mean? But it all depends on, hey, are we doing the maintenance? Are we making sure the air is flowing all the time? How many trees per minute? How hot is it? There's so many variables. But if you're willing to do the maintenance, and the pads are expensive, right? But if you're doing the maintenance, willing to do the maintenance, this is far safer on the tree. If you're running a large fleet and you have a bunch of guys doing it and not doing it yourself, man, it's a lot of people go down this road just because there's less maintenance involved. So I couldn't tell you exactly what that is, difference-wise for time, but this definitely has a finite life. This can last longer when taken care of.
So, la diferencia en las dos almohadas depende todo del mantenimiento. Si tienes gente de confianza de los choferes que sabes van a hacer el mantenimiento como se debe, estos pueden durar mucho más que los ovalados. Pero la diferencia es, estos no dañan tanto el árbol y estas sí. So, muchas veces lo que pasa, si tienen una cualidad de 10 o 12, si no tienen la confianza de que lo vayan a estar dando vuelta, es cuando muchos cambian a los ovalados. Pero todo depende del mantenimiento.
And one other thing to keep in mind as well too, it's not just maintenance, right? It's the driving. When the driver's going, and if they're clamping out here a lot at the end of the pads, what happens is they can destroy the end of that in a hurry because they're clamping out here. If we got good clamps all day long and we're taking care of the pads, this will by far outlast us. This, however, requires the maintenance, and you got to make sure that you're clamping good as well. Because what happens is, and the other thing is like guys are so close to the tree, they go by the tree and they hit the tree right here. That's why we started making these so they recess in there further so you can't catch it. It does make it a little harder to take out sometimes when it's done. But that is recessed so you can't catch the tree as easily now. But when the driver catches the tree or the driver's clamping out here toward the end of the lot, slings don't last as long, pads don't last as long. So, guys need to be paying attention.
So lo que dice que también tiene mucho con los choferes. Si los choferes están agarrando el árbol de la punta, se van a dañar más los almohadas de aire. Lo que pasa muchas veces es pueden quebrar el diffuser o empiezan a pegar por rozar al árbol con el lado de enfrente. So, eso también puede cambiar en cuánto vaya a durar los dos almohadas.
I think Kevin will talk about it a little bit later too. When we're talking about shaker hits and things, it's like the driver has a huge impact too, right? You got to make sure that you have good drivers who are not just take care of the machine, but they're using it properly and they're paying attention. So you can tell a lot just from listening, especially on the shaker head. You hear that clanking, knocking, banging. Man, there's something wrong. Everything should be tight. You shouldn't hear a lot of, if the clamp arm's loose, moving up and down, or a pin's loose back and forth, clamp cylinder's not holding pressure, and they can make a lot of noise. We're really counting on the driver too, to be aware that, listening for all those noises. Same with like the sweeper head, right? You hear the clanking, banging, the driver needs to be aware of what's happening. And there's some other, driver also, we talked about the air gauge, they gotta be watching the air gauge while they're going. They gotta be looking at the screen. If there's a little yellow bar, it's a warning, right? There's a little red bar, it's like we need to stop, we need to take care of something. We'll touch on that in a little bit. But I can't say enough about making sure that we're prepping drivers to make sure that they're paying attention, because if they're not paying attention, we can make some quick damage in a hurry.
Mucho del mantenimiento de la máquina tiene que ver con el chofer. El chofer siempre tiene que estar al pendiente de cuánto está el aire. So, tiene que ver mucho con qué tan pendiente está el chofer de la presión del aire, de la presión de la clampa, y tiene que escuchar la máquina. Muchas veces en la máquina se escucha cuando la cabeza, si los suspension mounts están muy flojos. Lo que pasa muchas veces también, el cilindro del medio, para el out, se desgasta y empieza a hacer más ruidos. Un buen chofer sabe darse cuenta cuando algo está mal o que no esté sonando bien.
All right, we got a couple of questions.
Yo tengo una pregunta sobre el tanque de agua. Para saber que tengo una buena regulación de agua en mis almohadas, ¿cuánto tiene de capacidad el tanque para las horas que me puede rendir?
So he's asking how many gallons are in the water tank and how many gallons should he be using throughout his entire day?
All right. Well, I guess it kind of varies. It's 25 gallons, right? And then we mix it with whatever silicone. There's handful of different silicones you can use. We sell Frontier, but it's the perfect one. So it's 1/4 to 25 gallons. I usually do a little bit more because it's cheap insurance to make sure you got plenty. So, but it should last the whole shift. And if you're filling it every shift, just go with the rule of thumb. I need to be using less than 25 gallons per shift, and it should be dramatically less than that. But that's what's available out there, and it's cheap.
So, la mayoría de veces, mucho depende de cuántas horas uno está metiendo. Un día normalmente de 8 o 10 horas sí te debe durar todo el día el tanque. Lo que he visto yo es en veces cuando están trabajando 12 horas o más, hay cierto punto donde llega que se le va a acabar el agua y tienes que volver a llenarlos. Muchas veces dos compañías usan 2 cuadrillas, una en la mañana y una en la noche. So tienen cierto punto donde le van a venir a llenar todos los fluids, pero sí debe durar todo el día. Como les explicamos de la pantalla, si está tirando mucha agua, hay que buscar si hay una fuga de agua, que todo esté bien en las líneas, y también hay que mirar que no tenga muchos segundos en la pantalla. So, la razón de que vamos que sepan de dónde regular la presión o los segundos, eso va a regular más o menos cuánto agua esté aventando, para que dure el tanque todo el día o hasta las horas que están trabajando. ¿Pregunta?
Where it says pads should be exchanged for fresh pads at least every week, you mean discard those pads, or you mean?
No. Keep cycling now. Yeah, no, just that one's so tricky because there's a million variables. We have to give you a recommendation, but I'm telling you, like, if you wait a week, dude, it's probably too long. And it depends on, some of our customers take 250 hours a year. We got other guys that are running 1,000 hours a year, right? That's a huge variable when it comes to pads. So what we do, we just need to make sure we're rotating them, and if they are getting hot, let's swap them out. And we just want to make sure you're doing it on a regular basis. You kind of got to check that interval, but really, rotating them and then swapping them out, and it's just, when we say swap it out, it's just so we're not wearing them out, and we have, what ends up happening is that we don't end up with any spares if we're not going through the whole rotation of pads.
Yeah, we've had pads that will go in a couple of years, you see the ribs wear off, they're super, you can see the wear, but then this last year we had a bunch that were just, it seemed like a day or two, you try to pin down the drivers that they're rotating, and there's still a lot of variables, I guess.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think the largest variable is like, in what I saw, I don't want to say a lot of lessons, it seems like I saw a lot more damage out here, like in this, and we had shorter diffusers, and I almost always want to say that it's clamping really close to the end of the pad, instead of where we should be back here further, because if you can, what happens is when you clamp the end, this diffuser goes sideways, and I'm applying 1,500 pounds of pressure. Can you imagine you wobble that thing back and forth? So if you're clamping right here on the end, you're squashing this, and then you're moving that thing back and forth. It's a recipe for disaster. I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's what I see more times than not. Is that it's a lot of clamping toward the ends. And some of the sales on that are also, a lot of sling damage where you see the ends of the slings, they rip out at the tip because you can see that they're pushing more toward the top than the center.
Or they got bark in the diffuser.
What's that?
Even they got tree bark inside the diffuser.
Yeah, so that one is that one we talked about where we're talking. It's that guy when we're driving across there and they hit it right here and they just scraping close to it. And that driver is probably doing a shit ton of trees too, but because they're so close and they're just barely missing it into the next one, they're hardly moving the head at all. Probably super efficient, but also when you hit that mark in there too, you're definitely tweaking that diffuser sideways. Oh, sorry, I lost my microphone. All right. Before we move to engines, anything else?
Right.
Right here, front right.
Una pregunta, ¿es recomendable cambiarle los balines y cada cuánto tiempo a las almohadas?
So when do we recommend changing the manifest?
So you don't really necessarily need to change it, but I would recommend that you strain it, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to get all the little bits of rubber from inside and start to break down. So you don't necessarily need to change it, but you should strain it, like run it through a strainer, pour it through there, and get all the small stuff out of it. But other than that, you should not have. Just get rid of the small debris in it, and you should be able to keep using it over and over.
So una de las cosas es que cuando cambias almohadas, muchas veces puedes sacar todos los balines y se pone como por un colador. Si pasan los balines, son buenos y todo lo más grande, todo lo que esté cuajado, se va a quedar en el colador. So, normalmente no todo el tiempo se tiene que cambiar, nomás cuando estén muy cuajados, sí hay que cambiarlo. Y por eso sugeríamos que lo pongan en un colador y ya todo lo bueno va a salir por el lado de abajo.
All right. Hey, up next, why don't we take a quick 5-minute break here, and then Al will get started on the engine. So you can take up, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, get a drink, probably a little bit of sausage left as well.
questions yet.
That's probably what it's doing. Is that old Steven's watching? Hi, Steven.
Brian, what'd you say, 10 minutes? 5 to 10 minutes now. Yeah. There hasn't been.
Is that balcony walking by? Oh, is that live? Oh shit.
You are still live here.
No, that's what I was just telling you.
I mean, it's fine. Yeah.
All right, guys, if you want to go ahead and find your seat. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and try and get you revved up and running on all cylinders today. We're going to talk about some engines.
Si quieren tomar asiento, vamos a empezar a repasar los motores del Cummins.
So at OMC, we are running the Cummins engines, and a variety of our machinery uses the 3.8 liter stage 5. Those machines include the catch-all shakers, the bin carriers, the AR 400 and 450.
So, el motor que usamos nosotros en una de las máquinas que usa viene siendo el 3.8, el Stage 5. Los bin carriers tienen ese motor, los que están en el pistacho y también los AR 400, los charros.
We also use a 74 horsepower 3.8 liter. That's going to be a no-def engine, and that goes in our elevators.
Otro motor que usamos es el 3.8 que tiene 74 caballos de potencia. Ese es el Tier 4 que se lo usa en los elevadores.
So one of the first things we want to talk about is the oil recommendations. These are the listed oils that Cummins recommends for your engines based off of your climate. The main thing is that it's going to be a CJ4 rated oil. We, at the factory, put a 5W30 in the engine.
So, la recomendación de Cummins del aceite para usar viene siendo la CJ4 y la que usamos nosotros en la planta viene siendo el 15W40, el aceite que se le echa al motor.
Some of the maintenance items on this engine includes the secondary fuel filter. That's going to be the larger filter on the left side of the engine, and we recommend you replace that at 1,000 hours. The Cummins number for that filter is FF266. Additionally, the primary fuel filter we recommend you replace at 1,000 hours. That's going to be mounted off the engine on the chassis. The number for that is also listed as FS1098. And finally, our oil filter. We recommend you replace that at either 250 or 500 hours, and that depends on your conditions. So if you're going to be in high dust conditions, we want you to replace that oil filter sooner. That filter number is LF16015.
El mantenimiento de los filtros de diésel, la secundaria recomendamos que los reemplacen cada 1000 horas. El número de parte viene siendo FF266 y el filtro primario también se le va a hacer cada 1000 horas. El parte va a ser LF16015 y el cambio del filtro de aceite va a depender mucho de las condiciones en donde estén trabajando. Si hay mucho polvo, hay que hacerlo a los 250 horas y en lugares donde hay menos polvo se le puede cambiar cada 500 horas.
We're also using the 4.5, stage 5, and that's going to come in our sprints, our monobooms, our hedgers, and our AR500.
So, el otro motor que usamos en las máquinas va a ser el B4.5 Stage 5, que se le usa en las cortadoras, en los monobooms y en los sprints.
And again, some of those service items are going to include the secondary fuel filter at 1,000 hours, part number listed there. Additionally, the primary filter mounted off the engine at 1,000 hours, the part number is listed there. And then the oil filter mounted on the right side of the engine, and that is replaced at 500 hours, part number also listed.
So, el mantenimiento de este motor también va a ser igual, la primaria y la secundaria se va a hacer cada 1000 horas, se le va a cambiar los filtros del diésel y el filtro de aceite también se le va a cambiar cada 500 horas.
In addition to the engine, the DEF system also needs to be maintenance. So there are a few items. The fill neck is the primary one we want you to consider, or the first one we want you to consider. That is going to be right in the neck where you're pouring the DEF into. That's just a strainer to prevent any foreign objects from getting into the tank. If you have trouble getting DEF into that tank, we recommend you replace that filter. The part number is listed there. In addition, the header in the tank, so the suction header has a filter. That requires you to remove the header to replace. That part number is listed there. That's also replaced as required. Finally, the DEF supply module, so the DEF pump has a filter in it, and that gets replaced every 2,000 hours. And again, the part number is listed there.
So, otro de los mantenimientos va a ser en el sistema o en el tanque del DEF. En la tanque tiene un filtro donde se le echa el DEF. Esa cuando se le llena de tierra o tiene mugre adentro, hay que cambiar esa viene siendo la principal. El otro filtro que lleva debajo de la bomba, tiene otro filtro, esa igual a como se requiere, hay que cambiarla. Y el último viene siendo en la bomba del DEF. Esa tiene un filtro adentro, la tiene arriba y otra la tiene abajo. Esa hay que cambiarla cada 2000 horas.
Another thing we want to note is the exhaust system temperature lamp. So there is a light up in the top left of this display. You can see the arrow pointing to it there. That light will illuminate whenever the exhaust system is at an elevated temperature. We are simply informing you of that. It doesn't mean there's an issue. We just want you to be aware that the exhaust is going to be hotter than normal.
So, una de las cosas que hay que tomar en cuenta viene siendo la lucecita roja de arriba. Eso significa que el sistema del escape está muy alto de temperatura. No quiere decir que algo está necesariamente mal en el motor. Es nomás una lámpara para enseñarles que está alto la temperatura del escape.
In general, that lamp will turn on whenever it's doing a regen.
So, otra cosa, cuando esté regenerando el DEF, esa lámpara va a estar prendida.
We also use the Cummins X15 and the 600 horsepower rating. We put that in our shredders. If you need more information on that, feel free to reach out.
So, otro de los motores que usamos viene siendo el X15 Stage 5. Ese es el único que ponemos en las moledoras, las máquinas moledoras. Si tienen algunas preguntas, también pueden hacer preguntas.
Questions?
¿Cuál dice? ¿El del DEF? Esa es cada 2000 horas. Se requiere cada 2000 horas cambiar el de la bomba. Ya los otros, ya si se ensucian mucho, donde se le echa, hay que cambiarlo. Es tan fácil, se dan una vuelta y sale. Ese sí, cada 2000 horas hay que cambiarlo. Sí. So he was asking for the...
So the question was just how often do you replace the filter on the DEF pump, which is going to be every 2,000 hours. Now I'm going to have the famous Kevin take over.
We're going to get into some preventative maintenance. We're going to start with some head identification. Most of the heads that you'll see running down here are your R7, R5, and R3. The R7 is the current head that we're running. Most sprints have that head. They also have the R3 head. The difference between these two, the easiest to identify them, is how you tension the belt on the R7 is where the shake motor is. How you do it on the R3 is where the reverse idler is. R5 is what we run on our two-piece machines, and then R4, we don't really see too many out there. They're more of for back in New Mexico and Georgia for pecans.
So, vamos a repasar los diferentes pinzas que tenemos, que viene siendo la R3, la R15, la R7 y la R4. La diferencia sobre la R7 y la R3 viene siendo donde se le ajusta la banda, y la R3 también tiene otra polea que está en diferente posición. So, si uno no sabe cuál cabeza es la que tiene, esas son dos cosas que hay que buscar. La R5 es la que se usa más en las máquinas del pistacho, los que tienen los decks, los catch-out systems, y la R4 se usa más como en los monobooms, en los más grandes, porque abajo tiene donde se le pone la pinza, se le puede ajustar para que abre más grande.
So on this next slide, this decal is on every shaker door. This is going to cover some of the information we're going to cover in the next couple slides to kind of help with you whenever you change a belt or change the energy roll pin.
So, esta calcomanía viene en todas las puertas, o va a venir en las máquinas nuevas, en todas las puertas. Es nomás un poquito de información para que chequear del mantenimiento de las máquinas que tengan esta calcomanía.
Alright, so this is very important. This bolt, if it comes loose, will wipe out the star on this head, which is right here. To prevent that from happening, what we recommend you doing is whenever you change the bearings, change a bolt or pin, you want to make sure that's torqued to 700 foot-pounds. Then what you're going to want to do is shake it a couple times, recheck the torque, run it for an hour, recheck the torque, and then for the rest of the day, every 4 hours, check the torque. Then you're going to want to do it every day for the first week and then weekly after that.
So, una de las cosas muy importantes que hay que tomar en mente va a ser cómo apretar el tornillo donde lleva el hinge pin de todos los valeros. Esa se torquea a 700 libras. Cuando cambian el tornillo o cambian valeros, siempre hay que cambiar el tornillo grande. Ese es el más importante. Si ese tornillo se llega a quebrar, va a dañar las dos estrellas, entonces ya va a ser menos trabajo para la máquina y van a durar muchas horas sin trabajar. Eso siempre hay que tomar en cuenta la presión que lleva el tornillo. La manera de hacer eso es que pongan los 700 libras y chequeanla unas 10, 15 veces. Trabaja la máquina unas 4 horas y hay que volver a chequearlo. Ya después de eso, cada día hay que chequearlo una vez al día para asegurarnos que siempre esté apretado ese tornillo.
All right, next is the head belt. You're going to check it the same amount of time. So what you want to do is when you put a new belt on, what it does is as it heats up, it stretches. You put a new belt on, you're going to want to run it, shake it a couple times, check for cracks, nicks, or anything like that. Then you're going to run it for the first hour, check it, and then every 4 hours after that on the first day. And then every day for the first week, and then weekly after that.
So, otra de las cosas es la banda de la cabeza. Cuando ponen una banda nueva, hay que chequearlo, trabajarlo unos 5 o 10 minutos y chequean la tensión, chequean que no esté dañada la banda. Después de eso, cada 4 horas hay que volver a chequear la tensión de la banda. Y ya después de eso, cada día, cada 4 horas hay que chequear la tensión de la banda. Aseguramos que siempre esté bien apretada.
All right. Next is the shake motor bolts. So these are four 14 millimeter stovers. Those you want to check about once a week. What'll happen is if these come loose, you'll take out this lower housing on the shake motor. Not very cheap to replace, and then you'll also take out this motor bucket. So you want to make sure those get torqued down to 180 foot-pounds or are checked about once a week.
So, en el motor del chequeo siempre hay que chequear la tensión de estos tornillos. Son de 14 milímetros y se torquean a 180 libras. Hay que chequearlos de perdida una vez por semana. Lo que pasa, si se llegan a aflojar, empieza a bailar un poquito el motor y quiebra las esquinas. Y ese motor está bien caro, so siempre hay que tratar de asegurar que siempre estén bien apretadas esos tornillos. So, he's asking how much tension the belt should have.
So the question is how much tension it should have. Usually we recommend about 1 inch of deflection.
Una pulgada que no se mueva más de una pulgada, es media para arriba, media para abajo. Otra cosa que pueden tomar en cuenta es cuando aprietan la banda. Si puchan con media fuerza para abajo la banda, no debe tocar tampoco abajo. So, suficiente hasta que no toque abajo del case.
All right, next we got the hinge pin. This is very important to keep tight because what happens is you have these brass bushings. If this bolt comes loose or nut comes loose, what'll happen is you'll wipe out those brass bushings. When those start getting wear on them, you'll start taking out the bosses, which can cause quite a bit of downtime because usually you'll have to take the head into the shop here in Shafter. They'll have to cut the bosses off and replace that. So how you know you have the proper torque on that is right beneath the nut is a Bellevue washer. That has a taper to it. So as you tighten that down, once that Bellevue washer is flat, that's how you know you have the correct torque.
So, otra de las cosas que hay que tomar en cuenta viene siendo el hinge pin. Adentro de la tijera tiene 2 bujes de bronce. Si no se mantiene bien apretado ese tornillo, esos bujes se van a desgastar y empieza a desgastar los 2 hinge pins que lleva en la cabeza, y cuando pasa eso hay que traer la cabeza al shop, hay que quitarle los hinge pins y ponerse los nuevos. La manera de saber qué tanto se debe apretar es arriba en la tuerca tiene una guacha, y ese guacha está como cónico. Hay que apretar lo suficiente que esa guacha queda casi plana. Así es como se da cuenta que esté bien apretada.
Alright, so for the next one are the suspension mount bolts. You don't want to over torque these. What will happen is you'll cause those suspension mounts to prematurely wear. How do you know you have the proper torque on these is when this head is free hanging, you should be barely able to change the center suspension mounts on all three of the sides.
So, otra cosa que hay que tomar en mente es cómo apretar las donas que le llaman muchos o los zules, los suspension mounts. La regla que usamos nosotros es apretarlo la de abajo solamente hasta donde apenas puedes darle vuelta con la mano. So, muchas veces lo que hacemos nosotros es la movemos y le apretamos hasta suficiente y ya no poder mover con la mano. Si los aplazamos de más, se empiezan a desgastar muy de antes y cada rato van a tener que andar reemplazándolos.
All right, next is a couple of the grease zerks that are on the head. You have a grease zerk on each side of the clamp cylinder, and then you also have one that's on the hinge pin. Any machines that have been bought in the last couple of years will actually have grease zerks on the pin bosses, and we'll cover that here in the next couple slides.
So, en esta imagen se enseñan las puntas de los braseras. En cada pinza, en el pistón de la clampa, tiene una grasera en cada lado y atrás en la tijera también tiene otra grasera.
All right, now on any new machine that's bought has been equipped with externally greasable bearings, which means you can grease that from the outside the head. They also have grease zerks on the actual wheels itself. Those are kind of more to get you out of jail if your top or bottom grease zerk won't take grease. You're still able to get grease into the bearing, so you're still allowed to run for the day.
So, en todas las máquinas que vengan con los valeros que se usan grasa, adentro en cada polea tiene una grasera para cada valero. Tiene dos arriba y dos abajo. Eso es para que si en las estrellas no les están echando grasa o no les entra, pueden engrasar cada valero individualmente por adentro de la cabeza.
All right, each new machine that gets delivered. Yes, sir.
Sí, so, la pregunta fue si va a llegar la grasa si le engrasamos de la estrella para abajo de los dos valeros. La respuesta es sí. Tiene la grasera de arriba de la estrella, ese le va a entrar a los dos de arriba, pero no va a entrar a los dos de abajo. So, solamente la estrella de arriba va a engrasar los dos valeros de arriba y la estrella de abajo va a engrasar los dos valeros de abajo. Si en dado caso que tengan una duda que no esté entrando grasa, también por ahí los puntos de adentro en la polea pueden engrasarlo cada uno individualmente.
Pregunta.
Okay, so the question was if it's guaranteed that each one of the grease points on top of the star was going to get grease to each one of the energy wheels, and the answer is yes. But the only difference is that the top grease zerk is only going to feed grease to the top energy wheel, and the bottom one is going to feed grease to the bottom energy wheel. The reason that we have those grease inserts for the energy wheels on the inside for all four of them is so that you can individually grease each one of the bearings. There's 4 bearings in there, so there's 4 grease zerks. ¿Pregunta?
¿Cuántos pompados se le tiene que poner ahí? ¿Manual o con una grasera eléctrica?
So, eso es lo que vamos a repasar ahorita, el siguiente. ¿Pregunta? ¿Cómo? ¿Cuál es la diferencia que chequeen con pesa y sin pesa? So, the question is, he wants to know what the difference is between shaking with the added weights and without the added weights. The added bar weights.
Basically, adding weights or taking away weights is just going to change the shake pattern. The reason we have that is with the R7 head, you're able to run almonds and walnuts. So if you add the weight, you're going to get more of a low frequency thump. So that's what the weights are for.
So, la diferencia de chequear con las pesas o sin las pesas va a ser en la frecuencia del chequeo. So, si estás en almendras se usa menos pesa, va a ser una menos frecuencia, va a chicotear un poquito más el árbol, y cuando las trabajas en almendras, que son árboles más grandes, ocupa más fuerza para mantener esa frecuencia arriba donde se debe mantener para agarrar un buen chequeo.
Alright, so if you bought a new machine, each new machine is delivered with a tube of grease and also a grease gun. IMG 124 is the grease that we recommend for our bearings. If you already have a grease that you're using and it's working, this is just what we recommend. The only thing I would say is don't mix the grease. What'll happen is there's a bunch of different bases of grease. So if you take one grease and mix it with another, it could solidify that grease or liquefy it, which would cause premature failure in the bearings.
So, todas las máquinas nuevas que vienen de la planta vienen con el IMG 124. Esa es la grasa que nosotros le recomendamos, pero si ustedes ya están usando una grasa que trabaja para ustedes o de cierta marca, está bien, lo pueden seguir usando. Lo único que les pedimos es que no mezclen las grasas. Muchas veces lo que puede pasar es se cuaja, se pone duro o se hace como agua. Eso va a causar que se dañen muy de antes los valeros.
Alright, so when you're greasing your bearings, this is what you want to see when you take the head door off. There should be a light speckling of grease. So let's say you are putting 25 pumps top and 25 pumps bottom. If you take this head door off and you see globs of grease on it, you're going to want to back off 5. If you take this head door off and you see a bunch of dust on it, you're going to probably want to add some to it. This is going to be what you want to see when you pull that off, and that's going to tell you how many greases you want to put in or add or take away.
So, en esta imagen les enseña cómo se debe mirar la puerta cuando van a empezar a engrasar la máquina. Esto ya sería después de un día de trabajo. Por decir, si le meten 25 arriba y 25 abajo, si sale la puerta así, está bien. Si sale lleno de grasa, que tenga demasiado grasa, le pueden bajar 5 bombazos hasta que se vea así nomás. Otra cosa también, si abren la puerta y tiene mucho polvo, quiere decir que no tiene suficiente grasa, o hay que echarle más. Eso se hace cada que vayan a engrasar la máquina. Quitan la puerta, la limpian y ya al siguiente día eso es lo que van a usar para basarse cuánta grasa le tienen que estar echando.
Alright, this is some more stickers and just some information on the machine. On your machine, you have a couple of these stickers, decals. You have the one that says stay back 50 feet while machine is operating. You also have this electrical box that's on the back. Do not pressure wash that. There's a lot of electrical components in there that if get wet will fail. And then you also have I think it's the Prop 65.
En cada una de las máquinas tiene estas calcomanías. La primera de arriba nomás dice que si esté alguien afuera deben de estar 50 pies de retirados. El otro viene siendo un California Prop 65, uno que se requiere poner en las máquinas, y otra es el donde no se usa que no se lave con presión. Sí es contra el agua, pero no se debe usar agua con presión, porque puede dañar todo lo eléctrico que tenga dentro.
Next, the reason we have this slide on here is because everyone asked why we run 2 batteries. We do not run a 24-volt battery or a 24-volt battery system. The reason we have 2 batteries is for the cold cranking amps.
Esta imagen nomás para enseñar es que en algunas de las máquinas más nuevas sí tienen 2 baterías. Nomás porque tiene 2 baterías no quiere decir que tiene 24 voltios, sigue siendo 12 voltios. La razón para tener la segunda batería es para el voltaje, para prender la máquina, para encenderla.
Next, this is a monoboom on the actual DEF fill, and then you have your also your diesel fill. On the Sprints, it's on the flip up behind the driver's side.
So, en estas imágenes nomás les enseña en dónde se le mete el diésel y en dónde tiene el tanque del DEF. En los Sprints va a estar el del DEF, el del DEF está atrás donde está el agua del tanque y el del diésel, el del hidráulico va a estar abajo del panel triángulo.
José, una pregunta.
Sí.
¿Qué es recomendable cuando al final de temporada es recomendable que quede vacío de LED o que quede lleno? Porque ya nos han pasado varios problemas con eso.
So what do we recommend at the end of the season, to drain the tanks and leave them empty or to leave them full?
So, did you guys hear the question? They were asking if they recommend emptying the tanks or leave them full. I've heard do one or the other. Either fill them all the way up to the brim and leave them, or drain the tank completely and leave it alone. Don't leave it half full.
So, puede ser cualquiera de los dos, ya si los vayan a vaciar todos ya para dejarlos, o que los llenen hasta arriba para cuando los vayan a parquear. No dejarlos a medias.
John, did we have a question?
Yeah. Gentleman asked, is there any harm in over greasing the head bearing?
So the question off the YouTube was, is there any harm in over greasing the head bearings? There's really no harm except for the fact if it gets so full of grease, what will happen is you'll start causing belt slippage, and usually what happens if you over grease, that whole case gets full of grease and it's not very fun to clean out.
So, la pregunta en el YouTube fue si hace daño echarle demasiado grasa a la cabeza. Y no necesariamente hace daño, pero lo que pueda pasar es que empieza a resbalar mucho la banda cuando se llena mucho de grasa. Y el otro problema es que cuando te toca trabajar adentro, pues está lleno todo de adentro de grasa.
All right, next we got your hydraulic fill tank, which is on the rear flip up on the Sprint. We recommend whenever you are adding oil, always make sure to clean around where you're putting the oil. Hydraulics do not like dirt, so what happens is it can cause premature hydraulic failure, so try to just keep it clean. Also, your fill level right here, don't overfill these. What will happen if you fill this all the way to the top, it'll start burping the oil out as it heats up and expands. So we always recommend try to keep it right in the middle when you're filling your tank.
So, en estas imágenes enseña dónde llenar el aceite del hidráulico. Una de las cosas que recomendamos hacer es nunca dejar que le entre tierra al tanque. Siempre hay que limpiar la tapa antes de abrirlo para que no le entre tierra. Otra cosa, en la otra imagen enseña en el nivel del hidráulico tiene un monito. Ese monito no tiene que estar hasta arriba, solamente que quede en medio, es donde debe estar. Ya cuando se baja, pues se le va a prender la luz del hidráulico que esté bajo. La razón de por qué no la llenamos hasta arriba viene siendo porque cuando el aceite se calienta, se expande y lo empieza a aventar por la tapa, que es lo que no queremos.
Okay, next we have the inner
question.
Hay unos que tienen ahí que no traen el Lego. ¿Cuánto debe de estar el tanque?
¿Cuál máquina es?
De pistache.
So,
Que no traen no traen los carbones ahí, no tienen.
Sí los trae, pero los trae atrás del motor. So the question is that he has some catch-alls that doesn't have an eyelet for them to know how much hydraulic is in the tank. It's the one that's behind the engine.
It's there.
Sí, es que, no, es que tienes que entrar por el lado de atrás,
It's on the receiver
asomarte
side.
por arriba el motor y atrás del motor tiene donde se le mira el aceite.
Como dice aquel, es que estoy gordo.
Pues yo también pues se le canso de ver.
Pero más o menos cuánto es el nivel que debe de llevar el tanque.
Una manera de pues, mirar eso, si lo llenas a que quede poquito abajo de nomás un tal strainer de adentro, que queda abajo, no llenarlo hasta arriba. Sí, son como unos 4 o 5 pulgadas, lo más que no llegue hasta arriba. Sí, pero él dice tiene unas máquinas que no tiene el vidrio para mirar. So quiere saber más o menos el tanteo de cuánto llenar.
All right, next we got power hubs. We recommend changing the hub oil annually. Usually at the end of the season, you want to make sure that you change the oil, change the oil out of that. That's a 75-90 synthetic gear oil. Also, there's a brake. That doesn't really have to be serviced, but if you ever replace a brake, you want to make sure you fill that up with AW46 before operating it.
So, en esta imagen enseña la masa y la breca y el motor de la llanta. Recomendamos que en la masa cada 500 horas o cada temporada hay que reemplazar el aceite. Lleva un cuarto de aceite y a ese se le va a echar el 75-90 sintético. Si en dado caso de que llegan a cambiar la breca cuando lo pongan siempre hay que llenarlo de aceite y esa lleva el aceite mismo que lleva en el tanque hidráulico, el AW46.
All right, next we have the suction strainers. This is actually on the back side. You have a couple suction strainers. You want to replace those anytime that hydraulic tank is empty, or if you replace your oil, try to replace it every 2,000 hours.
So, adentro de estos tanques, donde lleva las mangueras de succión, lleva un filtro de alambre. Esos, cada que tengan chance, si se llega a vaciar el tanque para cualquier razón, hay que mirar esos filtros, hay que cambiarlos si esté vacío el tanque.
All right, next we have the charge pump hydraulic filter. That's located underneath that back flip-up panel. That is for your hydrostat. That has a very high micron. You want to make sure you're changing that either 1,000 hours or annually.
So, atrás en la máquina donde tiene el hidrostático, tiene un filtro de carga. Esa hay que cambiarla cada 1000 horas o si se puede cada año.
All right, and the final slide before we go to lunch here is, this is your cap filter. This is located on the flip up right in front of the driver. That's just a paper filter, but we recommend you replacing that every year.
So, en esta imagen se mira donde tiene el filtro para el aire que lleva presión a la cabina. Esa está localizada debajo del triángulo donde si tiene tanque de agua, va a estar pegado al firewall, es donde se le va a cambiar. Ese hay que cambiarlo cada año.
All right, and then after lunch, we'll get into air filters and some hydraulics, and then also Weiss McNair. For now, we're going to take about a 30-minute lunch. 30 minutes for lunch, and then we'll get started after that.
So, ahorita vamos a repasar esto después de que tomamos lunch.
Brian, what side? What side are they going to start on? That side or that side? So you're going to start on the side that Brian is and then go around.
So, ahorita para el lunch van a empezar del lado donde está Brian. Hagan la fila para entrar de este lado, por favor. Gracias.
Kevin, what's left? Electrical, air cleaners, electrical.
Air cleaners, hydraulics, and electrical.
Pause it.
No quebró nada, pero a un tiempo ahí tratando nada. Apretaron con las pistolas chiquillas, los tornillos nomás así, y luego con la extensión larga, y se aflojó. Por lo regular le doy con la pistola, pero no de la racha. No, la racha de presión sí, pero más fuerte. Pero
Aquí son de los que levantan pues la base de
Sorry to bother you, but
I don't know what those are for. It looks like maybe some sort of test fitting for hydraulics. Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.